Hey, this is Lori Jennings, founder of Jennings Pro Search, an executive IT recruiting firm that places senior to executive levels in mid-market companies. On my show, I'm on the Mike King Show, um, and I've been talking about job search strategies right now. In my world that I live in, we've been impacted a lot by layoffs. And there's a lot of other people that are just miserable and want out. So been kind of talking about that. And today I have a special guest, Candace Nichols. She's the SVP of People and Workplace at Snagajob. So welcome, Candace.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here
Yeah.
talking about work and how to make work better. Some of my favorite things.
Well, good deal. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I have, like you said, I lead up all of the people stuff at Snagajob. And if you're not so familiar with Snagajob, we are the country's largest marketplace for hourly work. So we don't actually do the matching ourselves, but we know that this has been an underserved pocket of the economy for so long. And we want to make sure that we are taking as much friction out of that job search process for hourly employers and employees as possible. So we build tools to help hourly workers and employers find each other more effectively. Internally, though, we are a technology company. So my team handles everything about working for Snagajob. So recruiting, compensation and benefits, company culture, really everything that makes us a great place to work falls to my team. So it's been fascinating to watch what's happened in this space over the last several years, both from an hourly standpoint. What are our customers? What are our hourly job seekers saying? And then what are we experiencing as a technology company? Probably some very similar things to what you've been seeing. So it's been just a really interesting dynamic.
Great. Well, tell us how we can find you. Anybody listening out there?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, I feel like all day, every day.
I know that's where we
Like
live.
so many of us in business, that is definitely the best place to find me. I'm on Twitter every now and then, but LinkedIn is the best place to
And
find
tell
me.
people how to spell your name because it's a little bit unique.
It is a little different. So my first name is Candace. That is spelled with an A. My last name is Nichols, but it's Nicolls. So no H, two L's.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to have you on here because, I've got a very narrow perspective. First of all, I'm a one-person company. I mainly stay in the senior technical and within IT. And I've been given job search strategies, but that's, we all have opinions and there's no one way to do everything. I wanted to find out from you, who's, both in that hourly market and then internally with your company, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, it's been quite different what we are seeing in both segments. And I think if we especially look back over the last 3 years, maybe to when COVID started, I mean, as an hourly marketplace, we saw impacts immediately. Our sweet spot has always been restaurant, retail, hospitality. Those were the verticals that shut down overnight, if you can remember back when COVID initially kicked off. And so for us, we saw millions of hourly workers all of a sudden displaced. And internally, we were still figuring out the best tools that we needed to build. We were still hiring. We were still figuring out what we needed to do while navigating this whole kind of move to virtual work. Then shifting into 2021, as things started to reopen, people started to rehire. We saw a boom in hourly. You probably experienced this in 2021 and 2022 also, just tech companies wanting to hire hand over fist. I mean, we were growing so much. We were trying to do so much. We had this entire new marketplace for talent open to us internally because we had made the decision to stay as a remote first company. We were fully distributed, so we could access the best talent for what we needed anywhere. But in the meantime, we were still trying to help employers figure out, okay, what's the best strategy to bring on hourly workers? And then we have seen quite a shift over the last year. I mean, tech layoffs are no surprise to anybody that I'm sure is listening to this. I'm sure you've experienced this with your own customers too. And so you have a wealth of talent that is now on the market from the tech standpoint. You've got great designers, you have product managers, you have engineers that you never would have thought might be available to work now. And so I don't know if you've experienced this, but for us, when we've started to post jobs, we are getting hundreds of applicants. Some are certainly more qualified than others, but still it is a time-consuming process to make sure we are looking at the folks that are coming in and really making sure we're giving the best fit. On the hourly side, it's been kind of opposite. I mean, we've seen the job numbers. I'm
Mhm.
sure again, some of your listeners have
Yeah.
seen the jobs report. We've been talking about
It's
this.
confusing, I
It
know.
really is, because you're seeing, we're living in the tech space. We are seeing more candidates on the market than we are seeing available jobs. But when we look in the hourly space, manufacturing, construction, some of these industries that are typically a little more recession proof, we are still seeing pretty remarkable jobs numbers. What we're seeing from our customers though has been really interesting, especially when we look at what's happening just internally. We are finding that companies in the hourly space are still struggling to find people, but it is typically because of compensation, or because this is the type of work that people have realized maybe they don't want to do anymore, because they have been able to make a career shift during COVID, or they've been able to take on a higher paying hourly job. And so there is still a lot of opportunity in the hourly space, a lot of hourly jobs, and not enough people to fill them for any number of reasons: location, compensation, the type of work that we're doing. So it's been a really interesting kind of the dynamic to navigate what we are seeing internally versus what our customers are talking about to us.
Mhm.
I don't know, what have you seen with your customers?
Well, kind of the same in the tech space is that we've seen a lot of layoffs. Some of them have been big announcements, from Meta and the big companies. And there's been a lot that have been kind of, it's been under the radar. So a lot of companies laying off, local companies, some of the consulting firms, because they had such a hard time finding developers during these last couple of years. And the wage inflation was so high. They found other
Definitely.
ways. They went offshore, and not just to India, which was before. They've gone down to Brazil and Mexico and places that have that are on our time zone or closer to our time zone. And we've been getting really good outcomes.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that. I'm seeing others just maybe wait, see what happens. So they put a pause on hiring. They're not laying off. They're still investing, but they're just not hiring new people. And yeah, I'm finding so many more applications than ever since, I think you and I met in the last recession. And I don't know if
Yeah,
we
that's
officially
right.
call this a recession, but we definitely know that 2008 and 9 was a deep recession. And I think that's when you and I met. You were at Ironworks at
That's
the time.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So it's feeling a little bit like that, except that now we have these tools that we didn't have back then, these social media tools. Yeah. So it's really kind of crazy what we're seeing.
I think you hit on something really interesting too, and that's the idea of wage inflation that has happened over the past couple of years, because I think there has been, more money in theory helps the economy as a whole, right? We want to make sure people are being paid the wages that they deserve and that are fair for them. I think what we have seen in the tech space is like people were hiring so much, and then that resulted in layoffs. I heard an interesting statistic last week that hourly work, wages for hourly work have gone up in some key verticals 26% since the start of 2020. And when you think about historic wage increases for this particular labor market, that's unprecedented. And I think speaks to what a lot of employers are needing to do in order to hire, especially since minimum wage has not changed in however long. I think what that is also then sometimes translating into is that people have sort of learned to make do with less. I know, with a lot of, we have done that at Snagajob. We unfortunately had to have a couple of layoffs that resulted as some of the macro conditions that we were seeing. And we are figuring out how to make do with less now. And I think some hourly employers are starting to do the same because they're having to pay such increased wages. They're getting better people. Still can't get quite enough of them, but it's been almost sort of the opposite situation of what's been happening in the tech space, where we sort of I don't want to say overhired. We hired a lot because everybody was growing. It was the era of zero interest rates. And so everyone was continuing to grow, and then they caught up with us and we've had to reduce some expenses, versus hourly employers were slower to catch up, even though they were paying more wages. And so now they're still needing talent. How many times do we go to a restaurant or a retail establishment and they are continuing to hire? I think they're hiring a little bit less because of what
Yeah, now I see about these little robots they've been able to hire or buy that are $15,000 a piece, and people really like them. They've been introduced into, local restaurant. I just read that this weekend. All right, well, let's talk about, the professional space, like you have the tech people and the other folks that you're hiring, Charlie, the Snagajob. Tell us a bit about some job search strategies, you think are effective. And what advice do you have for these folks looking right now when we're getting 200 to 600 applications per job and you're trying to
Yeah.
stand out?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. For me, we work very hard to make sure that our job descriptions are accurate, they are inclusive, they reflect the culture at Snagajob. We have worked hard to remove bias from them. Like, we really think they do a good job of reflecting who we are as a company and the type of people that we want to hire. And so I think the very first thing I would say is really assess it, not just if the skills are right for you, but if the culture is right for you, and make sure that that's reflected in your application. I think so many companies right now, because they're not hiring very much, they're really putting a lot of thought into the people that they're bringing on. So you really want to make sure that you're reflecting not just that you can do the job, but that you're going to be additive to the company culture and what they are looking to do. And so I think one of the things that we always really love to see is, highlights of specific projects. We want to see people who illustrate outcomes on their resume. So we don't just want to see, if you're a sales rep, that you had a quota of $60,000 a month. We want to see that you exceeded your quota by 125% a month or something like that. So really focus on making sure your resume reflects outcomes that you drove, not just tasks that you did. I don't know if you're seeing that a little bit more, but for us, that's something that's really important. We love when people have looked us up, not just on LinkedIn or on social media, but maybe have applied to be an hourly worker through Snagajob, just to understand the process of what it's like. How do we, using the product of a company that you're applying to, I think is really meaningful, because you can bring that up in conversation or bring it up in cover letter or part of the application process. We want people that are invested in who we are and making us better. And I think that's a great way to demonstrate that you're committed to the company and what they do. And I think lastly for us, we love when people apply quickly. I don't know how else to say it, but when you get 600 applicants, it can be hard to go through all 600.
Yeah.
And because we are used to dealing with an environment where you had to move fast or you were going to lose great candidates. I'm sure you experienced that exact same thing. We want to be really respectful of everybody's time and move through the process as quickly as possible. And so I think, not waiting when you see a position that looks like a great fit for you, and not to say that you shouldn't tailor what you're doing. That's exactly what I said to start with, but really making sure that you are applying quickly, that you're getting your name out there fast, because it is such a competitive market.
Yeah, I like to see that too. One of the things that really stands out to me when I get 200 or 300 resumes is that somebody writes me a customized note, not just that generic one, because everybody right now is doing this quick apply on LinkedIn or whatever, and then they're sending that automated, I'm really interested in your job based on whatever. Would you write me a customized note that shows that you read my job description? Because I too take a lot of time. Candidates have asked for transparency. They've asked for us to do better. And we're taking the time to do that. So we want you to do better as well. And we want you to customize your application and just write something that shows your interest and passion for either what we're doing as a company, your culture, you're giving that information, or just the job itself. There's something in that job. And if I see that, I'm going to respond to you regardless. But if you send me that generic hello, it's automated, and I can't tell you that I'll get 15 within an hour that all push that automated button that says, hey, I'm very interested in your job, and based on my whatever, and it pulls from their LinkedIn profile. Most of the time that doesn't even align with the job I'm hiring for. It's a generic one. I get turned off by that, and they don't stand out. So for me, I've told people, focus on quality of applications versus quantity.
That's a great point.
And going out there and really researching, because like you said, you want somebody that can tell you why you want this job.
Yeah.
And you got to dig deeper to figure that out versus, hey, I just want a job. I need a job.
Totally agree. And I want to, if I can go on a slight tangent for a second, I want to ask about something that you just referenced around transparency too. I think one of the things that we have found to be really helpful for people to apply is putting our salary ranges and our accurate salary ranges in the job description. For us, it really kind of highlights our commitment to pay transparency and pay equity, but also let someone know if this just isn't going to be the right fit for them. How are you seeing that with your customers? Starting
Well,
to be more willing to do
certain
that?
states are requiring that
Sure.
now. And I'll tell you that some of my clients, based on these states, are asking not to recruit there.
Oh,
So I don't know if that's backfiring, but I think it's more than just that. It's
Yeah.
also some of the labor laws and things. Yeah, I always give, I'm not allowed to post. Again, I'm an outside
sure.
recruiter. So my clients, I ask that, but most of them tell me they don't want that. And I think there's also, they've got to do some work internally for pay equity, you know? And if they're not, they're probably working on that, but it hasn't been completed. So most of my clients are not comfortable right now with me posting pay ranges. I have a few that are, because everybody gets paid the same if you're in a category, which I really like. So, and everybody in the company knows what everybody makes. That makes it easy. But I see that coming. And what I do, when I do a lot of my outreach to candidates versus the ones that are applying, I always give the salary range when it's me sending an outreach, because people want to know that immediately. I also tell the location and whether it's on site or a hybrid or whatever, because those are two pieces that are really, really important right now to people.
Yeah. Well, I would just say my plug for any company that's out here listening and has put a stake in the ground. They are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is impossible to do that unless you are committed to pay equity.
Yes.
Because pay equity is foundational. Being paid fairly, being paid equitably, knowing that you are being paid for the work that you're doing and that work is being rewarded no matter who you are, is step one. It is a non-negotiable for me. So that was just, I would like to throw that out there for any company that is
I 100%
saying
agree.
that's
And
the
what
case.
yeah, I agree with that.
It'll take, and if you have work to do, I think it's also important to recognize that and take steps to fix it and then commit to it.
Yeah,
going
and
forward.
I don't ask people now what they make. You know, I just don't
same.
believe in that.
It
I
doesn't
ask, what are
matter.
you looking for? Because if you're a fit for my job, I don't care what you were making before, because first of all, there's a lot of industries that pay less.
Yeah.
So in general, and then we do, you know, we know there's certain categories that tend to be paid less. Yeah, so I don't ask, because I just want to know what you're looking to make. And if you give me a number that's less than my range, and I think you have the skills, again, I'm not always able to assess technically if you're a fit. I say, if you're a fit for this job, you're underselling yourself, and this is the range. This is what we should ask for. I try. Some people still don't have the confidence to ask for more money.
Yeah, and that's one thing. We don't even ask people what they're looking for because we have it in the job description. People know that they're going to get an offer somewhere in this range if they accept an offer with us. Because again, we know what everybody else in the company is making. We want everybody to have transparency about where they fall in the band. And it was a little bit of a tangent of what we were talking about, but I think it's so important, especially when we're talking about companies hiring the right people and employees finding the right fit for them. You know, having a company that values you for the skills that you bring and being willing to compensate you fairly for it is critical.
Absolutely. Well, let's flip the switch a little bit. Let's flip that and talk about some things that you see people making, maybe some mistakes, things that get them eliminated that are easy to fix. Like what are those?
Yeah, I think because it is such a competitive job market right now, just basic typos, grammatical errors on your resume, there's just no room for that at this point. I think it's really important to make sure that you are proofreading your resume, even proofreading your cover letter. I still occasionally will get an outreach to someone under a different name because it's a form letter someone has used. I think again that reflects directly on your attention to detail, and we really want to make sure that that you're putting your best foot forward. I think a lot of recruiters are still sourcing themselves in addition to waiting on applications to come in. So really beefing up your LinkedIn profile. I know you and I were talking about this too. I think having a LinkedIn profile that truly describes what you've done, again, going back to the outcomes that you've driven, setting up that profile really almost like a resume. So when a recruiter is searching for certain key terms, they can very quickly look at your background and do that more proactive outreaching. So you're not just applying and crossing your fingers and hoping something comes out of that. I'd be curious to ask you the same thing.
I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn, and I've talked about it. I'm like, you've got to get, I see these people that haven't looked for a job since COVID.
Yeah.
And first thing I do is look at their LinkedIn profile. And I just say, hey, you haven't looked at this. It's obvious. It's not filled out. It's old school. Things now are more authentic. People are being, I think LinkedIn should be more, I've heard somebody say this recently, and I agree, more of a commercial for you.
Mm.
So in addition to your resume, it should have what you've done so we can find you. But it also should tell a little bit about your personality. I want to know things like I see you post. I want to see you posting. I want to know what's important to you. I want you to come through, as a thought leader in your space. And when you're commenting on people's posts and when you have your recommendations down there, and I might know the person, or that really helps you stand out. Well, when I look at your LinkedIn profile and it's blank, there's nothing in there, you barely have any connections. Well, that doesn't really, if you're looking for a job actively and you're unemployed, you need to fill that out. And you really need to have a professional photo. So yes, LinkedIn. I'm so glad you brought up LinkedIn because I don't want to be the only one, but I preach it, preach it, preach it. You really you gotta live on LinkedIn. I think that can help you.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
Yeah. Any other mistakes? Because for me, a few things that I'm seeing happen, and it's the sending me generic outreach, where clearly I've had somebody do it with the wrong name, or hello without, when you can see they've clearly just sent it to everybody. But once I get them in the interview, the thing that bugs me the most is if they show up late in my video chat room, and don't say anything about it. And if they haven't done research on the company, read the job description, and can tell me why they're interested in this job. Those are just some basic things that everybody should be prepared for to get you eliminated. Plus, being professionally dressed. Still see a few people showing up in things that I think are questionable. Now, if the candidate has everything I'm looking for and they do a really good job, I will take the time to let them know, hey, I'm going to put you through, but you have absolutely got to be more professional in your dress. You've got to be prepared for this. I want to try to give candidates the benefit of the doubt and see how when they get with my client. But if it's really off, I'm not going to put you in front of my client.
Yeah, I think the professional dress thing goes back to company culture. We are a tech company, our CEO wears a Snagajob t-shirt on every single call, whether it's with a candidate or not. So for us, I want you to be able to speak clearly, be in an environment where I can actually hear you on a Zoom call, but it doesn't matter quite as much to us about how you're dressed. But again, someone would know that if they've done their research. If you show up in a suit, great. If you show up in a t-shirt, that's also fine.
And professionally dressed does vary. And I said that always
appropriately dressed.
Yes, because I have a lot of tech companies that specifically ask for them to be in business casual. They want to see what that means to them. They want to see how they take it, how they're going to show up. And I've had people show up in hats and tennis shoes and, lots of distracting things. And that's their thought. Then, they might be eliminated. It depends on the company.
Totally.
So that's why you have to ask. But when in doubt, try to be professional. And a lot of it's just being.
It's doing your homework.
Yeah,
it's doing your homework on what
again, it's all about that quality. It comes down to, you can't possibly know all of this for 500 companies. When I see people saying, I applied to 500 companies and haven't had a job yet, I'm like, that's probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
You can't do that effectively, All right. So any other piece of advice before we end the show?
Well, I would say for folks that are job seeking right now, I know it is a tough market, especially in tech companies or in more kind of white collar professional space. This is really the time to lean into your network. I mean, that's Lori and I have both spoken about LinkedIn here. And so it's not just a matter of building up your profile, but actually connecting with people that you've met. Make an effort to stay in touch with people in the space that you're interested in being in. It really does make a huge difference. I mean, we referenced this earlier. We've known each other for 15 or 16 years. And then we just bumped into each other recently. We're like, oh my gosh, we have to reconnect and talk about this stuff. And so the importance of staying connected with people is really, really valuable. And I think for employers, again, you still want to put your best foot forward when it comes to attracting the best candidates for you. Be authentic, be as transparent as possible, make sure people know what they can expect from you as an employer and showcase what sets you apart.
Great. Well, thank you, Candace. Tell us again how we can reach out to you, find you.
So I'm Candace Nichols. You can find me on LinkedIn. Occasionally I'm on Twitter, but like I said, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
All right. And this is Lori Jennings. You can find me on LinkedIn at Lori Jennings, Lori, Jennings with a J, or my website, jenningsprosearch.com. Thanks so much for listening and see you next week.